have the pastor
Pastor Brooks?
keep talking.
Oh, well, you can talk to him. You don't have to wait for me.
Wojcicki.
Okay.
It's 57.
No, I was just telling the board operator, Madam Board Operator, that she does not have to wait for me to speak to you.
Oh, okay.
You believed in me.
Okay.
It wasn't even, it's funny. I just, for ease of convenience, I'm just so used to talking back on your line.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted you to know.
Was.
Okay, so I don't want you to
right.
feel like, oh my gosh, she's the only one who can speak to him. No, that's not true. Okay.
No. Hey, I speak to him every morning. I'm the first person to speak to him.
There you go. I just wanted to make sure, I always like for people to be included. You can ask Pastor Brooks. He knows the kind of family I come from. We include. We don't believe in exclusion. We believe in inclusion. Is that not right, Pastor Brooks?
That's why I'm proud to re-elect J.B. Pritzker. And I hope you will too.
Okay.
Paid for by JP.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
The shortages that car dealers are facing, and all because of a semiconductor chip the size of a quarter.
All right, I got him.
Okay,
We're
fantastic. We are good.
Just one more example of how COVID-19 has impacted our lives, even in a post-vaccine world. It seems
All right, we'll be going live around 6:07:50.
Okay.
Everything we use every day relies on silicon-based semiconductor chips, and there's a backup never before seen. So what does this all mean for us? We need your used vehicles urgently. What does this mean for you? We're paying top dollar, and we're making quick deals. Stop by our store at the corner of 115th and Pulaski Road, and we'll do a quick evaluation of your vehicle, and you might leave with a hefty check in your pocket. Please call 773-239-7900 today. McCarthy Ford wants your car.
Okay.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
And can I have a quick word with you after the show?
What is
Jewel.
your number story?
My number story is starting.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It's nothing bad. It's nothing bad at all.
Okay. Do you want me to call you or just talk over?
Whatever makes you comfortable.
Okay, I might just call you because I usually get out of the studio right when we're done.
I understand that.
To go edit. So I'll call you after the show.
Okay, it'll be very, very quick.
2/3 of us.
Okay.
Okay? It'll be very, very, very
and
quick.
leads to realizing that I can
Not
live
bad
life
at all.
by my own standards.
Something I would like you to help me to do.
The more likely
Okay?
you may experience a host of serious health effects, physical and mental. But that doesn't need to be the case. Your ACE number is simply an entry point to your own story. Where it leads is up to you.
My number story begins with years of emotional abuse and leads to peace, clarity, and security in my self-worth.
Take control of where your number story leads at numberstory.org.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
Or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner?
Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat? Or a retiree who fell ill and had to
choose between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Are you ready to go?
Not yet. I just need one more minute. Am I off by a minute?
You're off.
Okay. If you don't mind. I just found something I want to talk about. Okay. Thank you so much. Are we up now?
All right. I just put in another PSA, so we have about 55 seconds.
Okay, fantastic.
All right.
Thank you.
It's your child. It's your child who's calling.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm calling to tell you something very important.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
The things that happened to you as a kid, the things you went through, they were not your fault.
And you're not alone.
2/3 of us have experienced what is known as adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs.
ACEs are not our fault. They happen to us, but they can hurt us for our whole life.
Okay, we have about 15 seconds here.
Great.
I'm calling because you're grown up now.
It's going to be a great show.
Yes, it will. Praise the
Happy
Lord.
Thursday.
Happy Thursday with the words of our mouths and the meditations of our heart be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Let's have a great show. Thank you, hon.
To know what's going on.
Thank you, Madam Board Operator.
I wake up,
Need to know what happened.
I turn on the radio.
Because information is power.
Okay.
CPT 820, where facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. The Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Get just a little bit of feedback. We'll work that out. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. Meet my morning stars, Daryl and Eric. Oh, my goodness. And Mark from D.C., Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. Boy, you all, we've got a race. More than 24 million people have already voted in these midterms. 53 million people will be voting by mail. Wow. Let me just, Mr. Dapo, how you doing? Hello. Miss Robinson, Cuckoo, just everybody meet Dave and Robert and Samantha and all my morning stars over on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson YouTube channel. Hey, and all my morning stars, like and share. Everybody like and share. And Santita Jackson and friends. And if you want to meet me on Facebook, Santita Jackson is just a landing page. They are kicking people off all the time. Please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That's where you will find me. All right, everybody, what are we going to be talking about today? Should Justice Thomas recuse himself from cases that are Trump-related? Indeed, it has been said, speculated by lawyers close to President Trump, that he is the justice upon whom they could depend. So what do you think about that? They saw him as a key to stop the Biden electoral count. He was the key. And of course, his wife felt that the Biden election was illegitimate and was urging the Trump White House to fight it. So what do you think about that? Because he has not recused himself from any of that. On the other hand, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson recused herself from the Harvard affirmative action case because of her, not just because she's an alum of Harvard, but because she has been very active in alumni and student affairs. So what do you think about that? She already coming out the gates has set a very high and really inappropriate ethical bar. What do you think about him? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. And then we're going to be talking about the economy with Dr. Max Wolf and you. I'll be taking questions and, well, actually calls about that throughout the show. Everyone says that the economy is it. The president yesterday, when he spoke about the democracy, and that's very important. It's also very high-minded when people are going to the gas pump and they can't pay for that. They're trying to figure out if they can drive their cars. Can they afford groceries? Can they afford to keep their homes? Are they living in their cars? Are they living in shelters? Really, are they living with family and friends? There's a lot going on here. So I want to know, what do you think? Should he have given one of the closing arguments about the economy? Call me, 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And let's really talk about what is going on here in this election, because Americans are very, very engaged in this. What about you? Have you voted? Please go to vote.org, and make sure you are still registered. That's where you can find out if you're still registered to vote, but also you can find out where you need to go vote. That's right. Make sure that where you go generally is where you can go actually to vote. And then if you have any trouble, at the polls, outside the polls, inside the polls, at the ballot box. Pull out that phone, take pictures, take video, but also call 1-866-OUR-VOTE, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. That is where lawyers have been gathered so that they can help you. Do not leave the polling place. Do not leave that ballot box until you have cast your vote, and they will help you to do it. All right, everybody. And please, Vigilante, the movie, you can see it for free today. So go to vigilantemovie.com. I saw it yesterday once again, and it is so powerful. It will inspire you to vote. Hats off to Greg Palast and Jamie Foxx for making this national free viewing possible. And of course, Martin Sheen, one of the executive producers, dear friend, just a wonderful human being and very, very progressive, really has worked all of his life to make America what it's supposed to be. In Chicago, we're going to have a high, can you believe it, of 71 degrees, mostly sunny. This is November. I'll take it. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 65 degrees, mostly cloudy. The Astros and the Phillies, they've tied it up. I'm not mad at you, Dusty Baker. The head coach of the Astros, who was one of Hank Aaron's teammates. Knew him when I was a little girl. 5-0. It was a shutout, and I heard some other people clowning the Astros because it took 4 pitchers to achieve this shutout. Hey, a shutout is a shutout. The Phillies did not get any hits yesterday. None that went home. How about that? The series is tied 2-2. In the NBA, the Bulls 106, the Hornets 88, and the Timberwolves were off last night. And in the NHL, the Kings will be meeting Chicago, and the Kraken will be meeting the Wild. Everybody, President Biden spoke and sent a sharp message to Americans yesterday as the midterms loom. It was an urgent appeal to Americans, according to the CNN report. He delivered a sharp message about preserving our democracy. He said, we can't take our democracy for granted any longer, emphasizing that the future of the country is at stake. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Do you believe that things are that dire? Do you believe that things are that dire? 773-763-9278, everybody. Indeed, progressive economists are warning of catastrophic outcomes for workers as Fed hikes interest rates. Indeed, the hiking of these interest rates are promising to put millions of Americans out of work. What do you think about that? That's driving, I think, a lot of the action in the election, a lot of the activity. More than 24 million people have voted thus far, everybody. In Ukraine, Russia's repeated attacks on critical infrastructure in Ukraine prompted emergency power outages and restrictions today, according to national energy companies, Ukrainergo. So what do you think about this, everybody? Former President Trump filed a lawsuit to try to stop the New York Attorney General from obtaining records from the trust that owns the Trump Organization. The civil lawsuit was filed hours after New York George denied an effort to move New York Attorney General Letitia James's $250 million lawsuit against Trump. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. But we've got one of my favorite people, the Grammy Award-winning producer, psalmist, of course. Who can forget the Tommies? Indeed, they are on tour now. Part of that legendary group, you and Percy. I love it, Percy Beatty. Love you both. You all did so much work, under your founder and pastor. We just love you. And of course, we have now got you are pastoring your own church, Grace Central Church in Westchester, Illinois, and you're giving away food. What is your address and how can people get this food? Because I know we would be surprised at who is in need. A lot of people are in need. Don't be ashamed. There's no need for you to be hungry, everybody. Pastor Brooks, what is the good news today? Where can we find you and when are you serving up this food?
Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. Again, that's Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street. That is Westchester, Illinois. Every Tuesday from 5 till 7, and Wednesdays for seniors from noon till 2. That's every Tuesday. Don't even worry about the dates. Every Tuesday from 5 till 7, and every Wednesday from noon till 2. We run off of 290 and Manheim, and we're giving some really good stuff, Santita. Come on. on by. We awesomely waiting and anxiously to serve you. Santita, I'm excited about the word, a lamp into my feet and a light into my pathway. I found out that if all the things that I've been through in my life, my family, my 7 stepfathers, my 15 brothers and sisters, when I tell you pork and beans and hot dogs, when I tell you information on my situation that brings revelation for my elevation so I can reach my destination with a confirmation where I'll never lose an inspiration. Somebody asked me the other day, why do you stay so happy? How do you do it, Santita? And I had to put something in my heart, and I started studying the Word of God, rightly dividing it differently than everybody else. Girl, if I had a minute, I'll tell you some things. 1 Peter 2:21. For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps. Santita, God never told us to be like him. He just wanted us to direct us so we can make decisions and choices in 2022. Girl, I'm about to run up out of here. If I use for a thought, I use for a thought what comes from my own self-interest, what comes from my own self-interest. Santita, we in scripture that often we follow ourselves and find ourselves at the end of the day on a mission to mess up our own lives. Wonderfully, God is on a mission to save our lives, bless us, and love us unconditionally, and show us the way for his benefit at our expense, for his benefit, for our benefit at his expense. I want to say that right. I'm excited about this word today. The word of God gives us fair warning that we will suffer persecution, tribulation, and a lifetime of cray-cray. Sandy, it comes from everywhere. Church, school, home, stores, restaurants, White House, Black House, laugh out loud. Santita is everywhere. Try to avoid the trap of blaming God. He's not the enemy. Often anger is directed towards people and God. It's as if one don't trust or believe who he is or what he said. How can this happen? What in the world is going on here? I'm glad you asked. I heard a kid say just a second ago on your program, listening in the background, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. Santita was the cutest thing, and she wasn't lying. Many of the problems we face in life, whether we admit it or not, we are a product of simply poor decisions and choices when it comes to God's plan for us. It is important to understand that God gives us free will to make our own decisions and choices. Santita, God did not tell a man to drive a plane into 2 buildings. He didn't tell a drunk to get behind the car of a wheel. He didn't tell somebody to date somebody without inspecting and looking on the website to see if they've been to ghetto. These are not God's doing. The starting point is a fully desire to want what God has for us as individuals first, and trusting this global plan for everybody else. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. I got to get up out of here, Santita. Having a desire to want things his way. God doesn't want us to have feeble desires, because feeble desires brings feeble results. Just as a small amount of fire only produces a small amount of heat. Santita, when a person gets into a habit of wasting time, it is true a waste of a great deal of time. As I close, often our self-interest makes us make decisions based on fear, eyesight, not insight. Don't ever find yourself giving something the benefit of doubt. Doubt has no benefit. One of the great discoveries you can make is to find that through God's word, you can do what you thought you never could do in God. Silence is a sacred place. If you ever want to really hear God, get by yourself. Get in his word. It will really speak to you. Try not to worry about things that God has already taken care of. More than a behavior modification, Santita, it's a heart transformation. Trust him with your heart. Self-interest often get us in trouble. But when we trust him for real, he'll bring a light into a dark place.
Doubt has no benefit, everybody. I take away, believe in that which is highest. Believe in God. And for those of you who are not believers, believe in that which is good. Believe in a positive outcome. Believe in those things. Believe. Remember the whiz. If you believe in your heart, you will know. Okay, you just believe. Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She found out that the Wiz was just a little man behind a curtain, and that it was in her power to go home the whole time. The lion already had courage. The scarecrow had a heart. You have everything you need. God did not send you here ill-equipped. I don't care what it looks like. I love you, Pastor Brooks. Love you so much. I'm going to make a pivot over here because I want you to take this message to your congregation that infections can be prevented. We and this pandemic, Dr. Shanina Knight, brilliant infection preventionist and registered nurse and college lecturer. And she is the head of the Association for Professionals in Infection Control and Epidemiology Center for IPC Research, Practice, and Innovation. When we hear this pandemic, and when we have behaved as if getting infected is an inevitability. It is not. It is not. And I was reading an article yesterday, Dr. Knighton, that said, you can stop the flu and COVID-19 with infection prevention. And they just had some tips. How do we stop? Because this year, we don't have to get the flu. We don't have to get the flu. You don't have to get COVID. You don't have to get a whole lot of infections. What can we do? Say just to not get the flu, because that's surging.
It is, and good morning. It'll be surging. The peak of flu season happens between December and February, but it is anticipated that we'll see it early. And I might have referenced this to the audience before when people say, well, are we living in fear, or where is the information coming from? But Santita, a lot of people don't know that Australia's seasons come before ours, and their seasons are reflective a lot of what happens here. And so when things happen over there, essentially we're able to predict, of course, with some additional factors, how our seasons are also going to pan out. And so while our flu season is typically peaking between December and February, it's known that essentially those peaks will happen early, and that it is also predicted that those rates are going to be worse. And the thing is we can make it through the season without having to be ill, but that requires a lot of hard work and a lot of vigilance on each individual to ensure that they are actually doing things, not just externally, but also internally. When I say externally, yes, cleaning your hands works, distancing works, wearing a mask properly works, and make sure that you're disposing of and not reusing constantly and handling it properly. But the other piece that's important is that it starts with self. If you are one of those individuals that are constantly putting sugar, food additives, and preservatives inside of your body, candy. So right now, a lot of people ended up doing a lot with candy because of Halloween. For 75 grams of sugar, it lowers the immune system for 5 hours. So imagine someone that sits there and they're enjoying their candy for Halloween, Santita, and they've lowered it for 5 hours. And then on that 4th hour, they like, oh, I'm going to go back in it and I'm going to get another piece. So they trying to do things in moderation, but they got 75 grams on top of 75 grams. Or let's say they did 30 grams because they trying to pace it out, but then they didn't just added a piece of cake at that 4th hour. It's like you're resetting your body all over again you're resetting your immune system or lowering it all over again for an additional 5 hours. So then after a while, if your body's feeling beat up and not being able to actually handle the overload of a lowered immune system, that is when the inflammatory response starts happening. And when people start to experience things, like, why is my nose running? Why am I feeling stuffy? Why am I having certain cold symptoms? It may not necessarily be a full-blown cold or a sore throat. It's just the fact that literally your body has triggered the inflammation response as a protective mechanism because you put the wrong things in it. Another thing that happens is if you're trying to eat correctly and your body has been filled with toxins and you're there trying to eat clean, your body will also go up under that same shock and try to get all of the inflammation out. We've been trained that sneezing and mucus is bad, and you know that it's not a good thing to be able to get it out, but it's best to get it out because that is your body telling you that you're having some inflammation more often than what would normally be expected. So I know for the sake of time, we're going to end it there, but I'm hoping that we can just keep the conversation going about how to stay safe.
Well, no, I want to keep this conversation going because I think that we have to emphasize to people that sickness is not a given. You can stay well, or if you get sick, you can get well very quickly if your body's strong enough, if you're fortified enough. So there are things that, you have a holistic approach to our health, making sure that we eat properly, understanding the impact of refined sugars on our body and on washing our hands. You have to emphasize that to people every day because for the first time, many of us, this is what we're just hearing, or it means something different to us now. Dr. Shanina Knight and everybody, her handle is Hey Dr. Nina. At Hey Dr. Nina, you don't want to miss her in social media. It's fantastic. She will make you aware. Let's talk about Justice Clarence Thomas. Should he recuse himself from Trump-related cases? Ketanji Brown Jackson is recusing herself from cases in which she might have some involvement, a bias. She's being careful. He's not. Back in just a minute. Dr. Knighton, I got about a half a minute before I have to let you go, but how are you doing? Thank you so much for that picture. I showed it to my mother yesterday. She just loved it.
Trust me, he's so fun. Yes, sir. I'm going to have to send you the one from last year when they had him dressed up as Mario.
Well, people have fun with these children, and these kids are not even aware of how they're being dressed up by their parents, looking crazy.
Hey, that's something. My husband used to tell me, I used to dress my son up. He's like, he is not a baby doll. He's so mad. I like, oh my gosh, look at him. He's so cute. All of his little hats and little ears on him. He used to get so mad, like how I had him dressed all the time. But I did, and I had a ball.
Oh, is that crazy? Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I mean, they have these kids just walking around. I'm like, no, I know this was not this baby's idea. Oh, but it's precious. That is precious.
Look, he'll find out when he see them pictures of happy birthday.
Oh.
Again, our doggy, his birthday is today.
Well, happy Pooch birthday.
It's something, he turned 2 today.
Bless his heart.
And the funniest thing is, I'm going to send you this video so you can see him because he was smiling.
Please do. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. I love that. I miss our dogs. I do.
I know.
They all passed. We enjoyed them when they were here. But I'm gonna let you go, sweetie. But do you want to hear this conversation about what's going on? I know you have a lot going on. I know it.
I'm listening in. This is my morning. This be my morning news because I'm being honest with you. There's only been so much of it I can take.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is probably the most news I get through the day. To be honest with you.
Well, the most news outside of your sphere. How about that? You're dealing with news all day, every day. You have a lot that you're dealing with yourself. That's all. That's all.
True. And somebody said it, like, if you got to fix the stuff at home before you fix the stuff in the world.
Yeah. So it's like, you're doing everything you can, Everybody call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Let me know what you think about Justice Thomas. Should he recuse himself from these cases that other judges would recuse themselves from? I mean, the thing is, in the Supreme Court, that no one has oversight over them, and that is a dangerous thing. They are the ultimate judges, and they judge themselves. That's got to change. And just because things were doesn't mean that they have to be. Things need to change. That needs to change. Somebody has to have oversight over the judiciary. Somebody has oversight over the presidency. And it needs to be exercised.
Miss Jackson,
Yes.
we have about 35 seconds here, and all guests are on and ready to go.
Okay. And we have Mr. Who do we have here?
We have Attorney Jones, Attorney Hoffler. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My soror,
And Miss
Anastasia
Wells.
Sinatra. All right.
All right. In about 15
Well, no.
seconds here,
Excuse
we'll
me.
go live.
Our soror, Dr. Knighton.
I know the Hey, soror.
Deltas are in the house, and I'm wearing my red this morning. Oh, yes.
Oh, good job. Good job.
Even though I wore pink and green when I was online.
Stand by. We're going live.
Can't make it up. Yes, I did. I found a green coat.
Here we go.
We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We're talking about Justice Clarence Thomas. Big story. He is refusing to, certainly he's refusing because he's not, recusing himself from Trump-related cases. And many legal scholars feel, and laypersons like me, feel that he should recuse himself from cases where he would have a conflict of interest. Everybody does that, right? That's what Ketanji Brown Jackson did. And to be fair, we have two big affirmative action cases before the court. The oldest private university in the United States, which is Harvard, and the oldest public university, which is UNC Chapel Hill. They are both, they both have cases before the Supreme Court to determine whether they will be able to use race as a factor in admissions. So, because of Ketanji Brown Jackson's involvement in Harvard as a distinguished alum, she said, I am going to step back. I'm going to recuse myself from this case because I've made my feelings about affirmative action very, very clear. And this is clearly a conflict of interest. Now, when it comes to the Trump cases, Justice Thomas has done nothing of the sort. So I want to know what you think about that. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. We've got Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Daryl Jones, and we've got Attorney Anastasia Sinatra who are going to help us to ferret through all of that. Want to know what you think about that, everybody. But before we get to it, let's get to celebrations by us. I just started putting in my order for a little bit of Thanksgiving food. So I'm not going to go to my brother's house and take all of his. Although I do come back with big Tupperware. Yes, I do. What's on your mind, Chapearl? What do you have going as we go into the holiday season?
Well, Santita, thank you so much for taking our call. And yes, we are prepping right now for Thanksgiving. We're only 3 weeks away. Can you believe it?
No.
So give us a call at 708-526-4546. We're taking your orders for your turkey, your mashed potatoes, your mac and cheese, your green beans, your greens, your fried corn, as well as also your sweet potato pie, your caramel cake, your red velvet cake, your banana pudding and peach cobbler. So don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I want to remind you, I love celebrations by us, but there are a lot of small businesses, Black-owned businesses, Latino and Latina-owned businesses, and LGBTQ businesses, and Indigenous businesses. There's a lot of people who really worked to get through the pandemic. A lot of people who are trying to reboot their businesses. Please give them some support. Give them some support in this season. You can be a lifeline for some really, really great businesses who render tremendous service to our community. And of course, Celebrations by Us is one of those businesses. Hey, everybody, let's talk about what's happening on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decoupled Harvard and the UNC affirmative action cases. So Ketanji Brown Jackson, she's recused herself from the Harvard case, but not the UNC case. And so some people are saying, okay, what are you going to do now, Justice Thomas? You need to recuse yourself from this case. Talk to us. Talk to us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let me start with you. Got a tremendous panel, distinguished panel. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, former president of the National Bar Association, legal analyst for Court TV, chair of Rainbow Push. She does so much. And then we've got Attorney Daryl Jones, brilliant civil rights lawyer from the Transformative Justice Coalition. He is the chair, and brilliant lawyer. Every time I hear her, I'm more and more and more impressed. She's the president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association. But of course, she's been involved nationally in immigration issues and so many issues of tremendous import. Attorney Anastasia Sanat. Let me start with you, CK. Help to set the table for us, and then I'm going to come to you, Attorney Sanat, and then Attorney Daryl Kenosha Jones. There we go. CK?
Good morning, Santita and everyone. We have to expect absolutely nothing. Nothing. Zero, nada, nothing. In terms of integrity and ethics as it relates to recusal from Justice Clarence Thomas. He's not going to do it. He will never do it. No one can force him to do it. So we don't need to be disappointed in thinking that he will do it. And I do believe that that is an issue of ethics. I do believe that there are cases that he should recuse himself from based on his wife's activities and based on his own activities. There's not a question about that. But getting to the point of feeling as a justice of the U.S. Supreme Court that you should recuse yourself will require an analysis that Clarence Thomas never makes, never does. He doesn't reach that point. He never has, and he never will. So I like to look at it in those terms and set the table in that way so that we aren't delusional. It's very dangerous in today's political climate, economic climate, and social climate for us to be delusional. We must not be delusional. He made no promises when he was going through his confirmation. He showed us exactly who he was when he was going through his confirmation. And that's who he is, and worked. On the other hand, we have Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. During her confirmation, she too showed us who she was. She showed us the moral fiber that surrounds and permeates throughout every orifice of her body. And she told us what she was going to do. On this question of recusal of these cases, particularly the case involving Harvard, because of the fact that she has served in a very significant capacity on some type of board and has done so much touching on affirmative action, she said during her confirmation, as it relates to that case that was already in the U.S. Supreme Court sphere, that she would more than likely recuse. And she's done that, is doing that because she showed us who she was, her integrity, her ethics, her moral fiber, when she was going through the confirmation process, where they humiliated her to no end, some of those senators. So, 2 African-American justices on the highest court of the land, coming from, and forget the politics, forget what party affiliation, because quite frankly, that should not be a factor. It should not be a factor when you are elevated to the U.S. Supreme Court, but it is a factor, and therein lies the problem. We cannot expect any of the 3 Trump appointees, by the way, to recuse themselves. There might be an occasional, they're not as staunch in that view as Justice Thomas, but some of the things that they said and represented to the world during their confirmation hearings were quite simply not what they really felt or not what they intended to do when they were elevated to the U.S. Supreme Court. But I knew that. Many of us knew that. I felt some of them were lying through their teeth, trying to punt, I will follow the law. Stare decisis is what it is, meaning if there's a precedent, I will follow precedent. Hook, line, and sinker. What they did in overturning Roe versus Wade is they didn't follow the precedent. They did exactly the opposite of what they were going to do. And by the way, when they were asked and other cases, they sat there and misrepresented. And there's some senators that said, "Oh, I felt duped." I didn't feel duped. I knew they were representing from the get-go. Why? Because they couldn't take that position because of the political nature of their appointments and be Trump appointees, period, end of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have today in comparing Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is polar opposite. They are who they said they were going to be when they were confirmed, and they are exactly, and particularly in the case of Ketanji Brown Jackson, because she's new in her tenure. She hasn't been there very long, but it appears that she is going to be that very stellar jurist, upstanding with integrity, ethics, and professionalism.
Absolutely.
That she demonstrated during that humiliating confirmation process.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and the ethical bar is one that she is seeking to clear. And that is not something that we're seeing with Justice Thomas. And I think that this has happened on the court before. It's just being revealed now. We're beginning to see corruption everywhere. Indeed, there were 8 emails, Attorney Anastasia Sinat, that were released by U.S. District Judge David Carter of California, in which President Trump's lawyers and others were talking about legal strategies to overturn or prevent the election of President Biden. And what they found was, they said, absolutely, the key person for us will be Justice Thomas. He's the person upon whom we can depend. Wow. And then you see his wife's activism. There's no harm in being an activist, but then you need to recuse yourself. I'm just saying this as a layperson, or am I out of order here, Attorney Anastasia Sinat?
No, not at all. In fact, there's an article by Above the Law.
Mm-hmm. I have that here.
The title of the article says it all. Ketanji Brown Jackson is already proving to be a more legitimate judge
than Clarence Thomas and
Coney.
There you go.
I
mean, they pulled 2 justices.
Right. When the LA Times goes ahead and says in Article 2 and says Clarence Thomas should recuse himself, no, you're not alone in that feeling. You don't necessarily need to be a lawyer to know there's something wrong.
What is wrong? What is wrong with what he's doing, and what is right with what Ketanji Brown Jackson is doing?
There are no ethics rules when it comes to the Supreme Court justice. Some other courts do have ethics rules that they have to file. Basically, the appearance of impropriety governs a lot of different people from being able to stay on a case and make a decision on a case. In this particular situation, the judges don't necessarily, the Supreme Court justices do not have any of that in order to guide them. They have their internal compass in order to guide them. And we've already known for years, Clarence Thomas doesn't have that internal compass in order to make the right decision. He doesn't care about what his legacy is going to be. His legacy obviously is going to be one of just disdain, because a lot of people are not happy with what he has done during his time there. They're not happy that he took over from one of the greatest Supreme Court justices on the court, Thurgood Marshall. So in essence, what you have is what C.K. Hoffler has already said. You saw him. You saw what he did. You know what he did. You know who he was during his hearing. You knew who he's going to be over the past 30 years. So here we are, and we're witnessing what he could have been, what he could have done. And this is where the conflict arises in people. People did not know it's an internal compass that they can use in order to do certain things. Now, he's not alone in having this conflict. This one just happens to make the news because it was such a serious situation. January 6th, the election and the invasion of the United States government by these individuals clearly was bad. Also, these text messages between his wife and the Republican Mark Meadows,
the chief of staff.
The chief of staff talking about bring on the Kraken. It's humorous to me that people would think that he would do anything more, anything greater than what he has been he has not been that great. Let's just put it out there. He's just not been that great. And in order for her at this early stage of her time to demonstrate, I am going to be great. I'm going to make you happy. I'm going to make you proud. This is just we're witnessing her character in action, and that's basically all it is at this point. As a layperson, if you feel it and you see it, then yes, you're correct. As an attorney, obviously, I feel it. I see it. I've always known it. So what concerns me, though, is that Amy Coney Barrett, and I'm going to bring this up, is going to be making a decision about race.
Mm-hmm.
She's adopted children from Haiti. They are Black.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A lot of people don't realize that Haiti was the first Black republic. But at this point, my question is, how will she rule? Will she say that her adopted children should be given an opportunity in order to be guided by the fact that diversity matters? And that's really something that the Supreme Court has already determined in a variety of different cases. But in this particular situation, I'm curious to see how is Amy Coney Barrett going to actually rule, because she has Black children. Does she think that their color is going to be a determinative factor in being able to obtain an education?
Well, I mean, or will she say, I mean, because President Obama said his daughters wouldn't need affirmative action. Not that he was against it, but when he said that, it was like, oh, wait a minute.
Well, they don't, because they're legacy. Because both his mom and his father.
No, I get it. And he was legacy, but he's also Black. I get that, but he's also Black, because he needed to be a legacy and to be a Black man to get into Harvard like his dad did, who was not a legacy. And we didn't even have affirmative action when his father got into Harvard. And, you know, we just have to be very, very careful, because the way that statement lands on, you know, in the world is very hard. It can be harmful to us. You know, because at the end of the day, race overrides it all. You know that, Attorney Sanat. It's we have different classes, but we have a caste problem in America.
The system of laws and the system of way people are able to get into the top schools within our country have been determined by this. Absolutely.
Because we've been excluded because of race. And white men have been included because of race. Let's flip this thing for a minute. Stay right there, Attorney Sanat. Attorney Jones, your thoughts?
You know, it becomes really interesting, Santita.
Come on, Kenosha. I want to hear from you today.
And we're listening to this, and, you know, the way the conversation goes, right, when it comes to the question of race as a factor, just as a factor, being able to be admitted into college, that Amy Coney Barrett and, of course, the other conservative justices are going to say, no, you know, race shouldn't be considered as a factor. That's where we know they're headed. But then the conversation that you're now having, should legacy then be considered? Because if the legacy is, you know, position is one that was based on not admitting people of a particular race, then there's a whole disadvantage that's there for those that were never admitted. But you have this legacy that is going to be permissible, and it seems to become, you know, a similar factor to what the race factor is that they're considering now. And I tell you, you know, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, I think, you know, it's unfortunate that she's going to recuse herself from the Harvard University case, because she can bring that perspective into play, and she does it so brilliantly with her analytical.
No, let me interrupt you there. I just want to engage you. Do you think that she had any space not to recuse herself? Because I've spoken to various legal scholars and lawyers, and some politically astute people who wish that she had not done that. He said, we really needed her to weigh in here. Even if she lost, it would have been great to have read her opinion. I mean, not that she won't establish one, but we just really wish she'd been, she won't write one, because she's recused herself from the case.
And it's a duality in the answer. And I say a duality because of this. From the Supreme Court, she is not required to recuse herself. By the Supreme Court rules, she is not required to recuse herself from the case. She did not have to do that. what she did was what, during the law school, we always talk about, the appearance of impropriety. She wanted to be above all of that because her focus was on the policy piece, the social piece of the Supreme Court and the integrity of the court. She wanted to be certain that at no point in time would the public look at this and say, you're issuing this ruling to fit your situation because you were on the board at Harvard. You wanted to fit this decision to benefit the board on which you sat. She wanted that cloud to be removed. She didn't want any appearance of impropriety. That's the reason that she's recusing herself. It's not a legal standard that requires her to recuse herself. There's not a board that sits over there and says, we're going to render this decision that you shouldn't hear this case. This is her own individual, personal, ethical decision to do this. And it's not wrong, and I don't want to give the impression that it's wrong. It's not wrong. But, if all the other justices had the same ethics, had the same guiding light, had the same pulling principle to do that which is right by the country, by doing that which is right by the court, and the appearance of how Americans see what the court is rendering in their decisions, they too would have followed their lead. Clearly, Justice Clarence Thomas is not doing that. He doesn't care about that appearance of impropriety. He doesn't care about how Americans see the fact that his wife is intimately involved in what happened with the Trump administration and all the January 6th and everything else, and issues coming before him, and him then ruling on those issues and then going home and getting in bed with her and talking about it. That's what Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is avoiding, is that nastiness, that appearance of all the impropriety, the independence of the court, and being certain that it's being upheld so that Americans can have faith in the integrity of the court system. That's why she did this, Santita.
It's amazing, CK. As you know, as Attorney Jones has brought up, she didn't have to do this legally. She didn't have to. Is there any oversight over the court? I mean, beyond impeachment, which of course has to go through Congress and all of that. I mean, how do we have a check on the justices? And I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. Before you go, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, because I know you've got a busy day, what thought do you want to leave us with? I mean, because she didn't have to do this. And so technically, Justice Thomas doesn't have to do this. But the question is not just, will you, but should you? Attorney Hoffler.
I think, Santita, your word is your bond. If you don't operate with integrity, if you am on the highest court of the land, if you don't put professionalism and ethics first, if you don't believe in the canon of ethics, if you don't feel that you should, even if you're not required to do so, look. And she's been a clerk on the U.S. Supreme Court. So she's not just someone who escalated up, through the Court of Appeals like many, but she's been a clerk. So she did what she thought was right. She told us she was going to do it, and for that I applaud her. Do I wish she were able to be on that opinion? Absolutely, but I think she did the right thing.
What do you think, everybody? 773-763-9278, 763-WCPT. Jules, stay right there. I want to take your call right on the other side of the break. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about inflation. Give me your calls. I want to hear what you think about inflation. No one's really, the Republicans are campaigning on it. The Democrats are not putting that front and center. It's democracy, it's abortion. All of those things are important. But now we've got these tighter than this races. And Americans are going to the polls looking at their pocketbooks. That's what's happening. And the advantage that Democrats gained at the end of the summer, some saying it's slipping away. Look, people vote, polls don't. You just need to vote who is going to argue the best case for you. It's the Democrats. That's what they're going to do. But you're going to have to also make them do it. That's part of politics. Even if you really, really like someone and you elect them, you're going to have to make them do it because other forces are prevailing upon them to do the opposite of that which is in your best interest. But you got to vote. And you need to vote for the party and for the people who are inclined to work with you. How about that? But I tell you what, politics being what it is, you can push any, and I do mean any politician to work in your interest, because guess what? They want your vote, or they certainly don't want you working against them. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Clarence Thomas, this headline from Vanity Fair: he will be wise to follow Ketanji Brown Jackson's lead on recusals. That's not what he's doing. And Attorney Darrell Jones said she didn't have to recuse herself. There's no rule that says she had to do that, but she did. Some people say, I wish she'd stayed there because, that's why we need you on the court. What do you think, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Vote, 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 everybody. Back in just a minute. Whew. CK, thank you, hon. I know you're running today. Ooh.
Absolutely, Santita. I do have to run, but look, this is a good discussion. Good discussion. I'm going to be talking about this and things on my show, in addition to voting next week and any show where I'm going to be doing commentary, because this is important. It's consistent. I've done a lot of commentary on Ketanji Brown Jackson and her candidacy and the kind of jurist that she is going to be, and she is proving to be that kind of jurist. I don't blame people for standing up for integrity and doing what's right. It's not, a lot of people may feel like, well, we needed you on the court to do. No, you need her on the court to take it to another level, to be Thurgood Marshall, to be another Thurgood Marshall. That's what Thurgood Marshall would have done. You don't need somebody on the court to be gangster all the time. Be gangster when you need to be gangster, but don't be on the. Okay, I shouldn't say that, gangster. Take a strong position when you need to take a strong position on issues. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and she is that. But when it comes to issues of integrity, I don't want to have a justice. I don't want to feel about Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson the way I feel about Justice Clarence Thomas. He is reprehensible as a jurist from my standpoint. And it starts with the lack of integrity, ethics, and professionalism. Mm-hmm. That is not what I expect of a justice of the highest court of this land. Simply because other people do it. We don't need to emulate that. And by the way, that's not a Democrat-Republican thing. Mm-hmm. That's what my expectation is as a lawyer when it comes to the people who sit on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, certainly that is mine, but, we're seeing that is not the practice. I'm going to let you go so I can free up this line. We have fewer lines now, unfortunately. Yeah. But I'm sending you much love, CK.
Thank you. Have a great day and a great show.
Hey, you have a great day.
Bye-bye.
My love to your family.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Of course. Oh, everybody, what do you think? Anastasi? And Attorney Jones? So, we've got we have a couple of minutes before we come out of this break. Is there anything you want to say to the Facebook audience and to the YouTube audience?
Please feel free to visit our website, HALAIL.org. We have a number of events. I just did an asylum training actually yesterday, and I have a couple more asylum trainings coming up.
I want you to come back and talk about that. What is that exactly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's, we really need to educate people so that they can get these migrants to file their asylum applications. So I've been doing that. Also, feel free to donate. We're always looking to donate. And I would love to invite you, Santita Jackson, to come to the welcome reception in Chicago here for the new Loyola Dean of the law school. She is Haitian American. And so Fantastic. We're going to welcome her. And
when is
December 8th. December 8th, Thursday, December 8th. It's going to be at Loyola University, Chicago Law School.
What time?
So if you have some time, about 5:30 p.m. We're going to do it Haitian style. So if you haven't experienced Haitian style,
oh, come on, get out of here. Of course I've experienced Haitian style.
I know it.
And the more you travel, the more you see. It's amazing with the African diaspora. And I know Daryl can attest to this. We are the same everywhere we go. It's the dark.
We all have red beans and rice. Let's talk about it.
Oh, come on. It's the darndest thing. Black people, that African thing, we held on to it. Yeah, I'm telling y'all that. Yes, we did. And it's when you get back, really, when you get back to the motherland that you really see it. You're like, well, I can't believe with all that we've been through, we kept this. When you go to Brazil, when you go to Haiti, when you go to the Dominican Republic, when you go to Venezuela, when you go to Mississippi and Mozambique, you see that you go to Brixton in London, we do the same thing everywhere. Oh, I love it. I love it, but it's always wonderful to see the different nuances because I think we have to learn about the different experiences that we've had in Haiti, in the Dominican Republic, in Venezuela, in Brazil. The first time I went to Cuba, and my sister had this experience too. My grandmother was a migrant worker there, and she described Havana to a T because Havana has not changed. And my sister's trip to to Cuba and mine, they were about 20 years apart, but it was stunning to us that her memories of Havana were so vivid. Because back in the day, the borders, she's from South Florida, the borders were porous. So, honey, the black folks down there, you don't know where they were born. Because, effectively, Florida became a different kind of state when Disney World got there. But, read Zora Neale Hurston's books if you have not read them. And you see it was just a melange of people. Sephardic Jews who were very dark, Black people from throughout the American diaspora, through South and Central America. I mean, it was, that was the Florida that she described. And Cuba, boy, oh boy, just hearing her talk about it. And she didn't like to talk about it much because she had a lot of pain. But it was very interesting because she said that they were little more than slaves there. Because my grandmother on that side of my family was very dark and very West African looking. And so that gave her a certain set of social options. It's important for us to, to talk about all those things because this is our history, everybody. It's our history. It's our history. But okay, you're going to have Haitian food, I know, right? I'm a foodie.
Of course.
Okay. That's look, I'm pitiful. I'm honest. I'm straight up with my stuff. How about that?
Right. I think if you meet the dean, you'll definitely have someone else to add a lot of different opinions to these types of discussions.
Okay. Miss Jackson, we have about 30 seconds.
And good morning, Daryl Jones. It's so nice to always speak with and to be on panel with you.
Absolutely. And we have attorney Mark Fancher, yes?
We do. We have him on, and we have 15 seconds till we go live.
Okay. I was interested to find out more about what it meant to do with Haitian style.
Oh, well, he already kind of hinted towards it. Haitian style not only includes our art, our culture, our cultural...
stand by.
But our food,
I'm waiting for it.
So...
I'm ready for that.
The food is...
Can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. What about Justice Thomas? He has not recused himself from any of the Trump-related cases, even as his wife has been so closely related to the Trump administration. What do you think about that? Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, on this one case that she did not have to, from which she did not have to recuse herself. She said, look, we have two major cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. The nation's oldest public and the nation's oldest private universities, UNC Chapel Hill and Harvard University, are considering eliminating affirmative action. That's the consideration. That's the consideration before the court. Many people wish that Ketanji Brown Jackson had stayed and weighed in on that, but she has a very high ethical bar. She said, I don't want any appearance of impropriety, so I'm going to recuse myself. But to show you the elasticity, I'll put it that way very generously, on the court, the moral elasticity, the ethical elasticity, wink nod, the justices can do pretty much what they want to do. And I think we need to look at that. Attorney Mark Fancher is joining us, brilliant civil libertarian and civil rights lawyer, and Attorney Darrell Jones, Transformative Justice Coalition chairman, and of course, Attorney Anastasia Sinat, president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association. Each one of them brilliant lawyers. Before I go to them and get to Jewel, let me give you some of these headlines. Chicago will have a high of 71 degrees. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 65 degrees, mostly cloudy. The Astros and the Phillies have tied it up. Yes, it took 4 pitchers, but guess what? The Astros got it done last night. They shut out the Phillies 5-0, and the series is tied. Let's see who's going to win. In the NBA, the Bulls beat the Hornets 106-88. And in the NHL, the Kings will be meeting Chicago tonight, and the Wild will be meeting the Kraken. So, everybody, let's get to President Biden, who sent a sharp message to Americans as the midterms are looming in 5 days. In an urgent appeal to Americans, President Joe Biden delivered a sharp message last evening, to those considering sitting out next week's midterm. He said, "We cannot take democracy for granted any longer." He added that there are candidates running who, quote, "won't commit to accepting the results of the elections that they're in," close quote. And he warned that targeted political violence might ensue if candidates refuse to concede, everybody. His message comes across as enthusiasm for the Democrats about voting is significantly lower than it was in 2018. And even though we are setting records, more than 24 million people have voted in person, 53 million have requested absentee ballots. Everybody, please get out and vote. Go to vote.org, vote.org. Find out what your registration status is and find out where you can vote. And if you have any trouble at the ballot box, outside the polls or inside the polls, don't leave until your vote has been cast. Call 1-866-OUR-VOTE, 1-866-OUR-VOTE, and speak to this team of lawyers who will help you get through this process and get your vote cast. 1-866-OUR-VOTE. 1-866-OUR-VOTE. You know, we've been talking about financial freedom on this show, and I want you to know that it is possible for you to trade in your debit card for a credit card. It is possible for you to buy a house even if you got poor credit right now. You need a plan. You need to have a plan to get out of debt and to get out of bad credit into a credit card, into good credit. You can, and great credit. That can happen, everybody. What about an FHA loan? What about a VA loan? What about reverse mortgages? What about these financial products that can actually help you if you know about them? Do you need to refinance your home? Are you a first-time buyer and you don't make a lot of money? There is a way for you to get to home ownership, and Team Hochberg can help you. And indeed, that is what they want to do. 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. They can help you. They can help you get a credit card. They can help you to get out of credit card debt. That's what happened with Tom and Sonia. They have 2 kids. They struggle to pay their 6% mortgage. And they had 17 credit cards with $100,000 worth of debt on those cards. That's not hard. People are charging their mortgages, groceries, everything. Well, guess what? They reached out to Team Hochberg and got a free consultation in which they told them everything that they're dealing with. And then they were able to work out a plan with Team Hochberg. Team Hochberg saved their home and cut down their credit card debt. Don't you negotiate with these credit card companies. Let Team Hochberg do it. And they cut down their payments by over $2,800 a month. That could be you. It could be you. There's nothing too hard. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or go to 56david.com and see what they're about. Go on, everybody. Financial freedom is and should be yours. Of course, we've been talking about this recusal. Before I get to you, Attorney Mark Fancher, as you join Attorney Anastasia Sinat and Attorney Darrell Jones, I've got my girl from New York, Jewel. Jewel, how you doing?
Good morning, Santita. Thank you for taking my call. It's me again. I just wanted to thank you. I appreciate it. It's just a big honor and a privilege. Your father has done so much for everybody, all colors. And now's the time for us to all come together and go vote. Because if you remember, when they had all those marches through the streets, we had a lot of our white brothers here with us. Amen. And that's all I want to say. Everybody have a blessed day. Make sure you vote, because we need to protect what we have before we don't have anything. Amen.
Amen. And I tell you what, Jewel, what we have to do is run our leg of the race. Don't ever say anymore that we have not come far, that we have not won. No, 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 no. Dr. King did his bit. Reverend Jackson did his bit. Wyatt T. Walker did his bit. Andrew Young did his bit. Hosea Williams, Ralph Abernathy, Harriet Tubman. These people got us through. Now, what are you going to do? How about that piece? Cesar Chavez did his bit. Dolores Huerta. What are you going to ask these people to do? They've done everything. Now, you know what? If these people push back against us with our rights, and they are doing that, they're pushing back against the work that's already been done. Now, we have to push forward and secure our rights, and maybe we'll appreciate the work that Clarence Mitchell Jr. did when he wrote the Voting Rights Act. Maybe we'll appreciate Roy Wilkins. Maybe we'll appreciate Walter White. Maybe we'll appreciate Thurgood Marshall before he got on the court. Right, Jewel?
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. I agree with you.
And Dorothy Height. And Constance Baker Motley. And Pauline Murray. I mean, folks have kept on coming, and they've been pushing for hundreds of years. Now, what are you going to do? Instead of laying back and, girl, come on. You don't get me started. You know you get me started, Jewel. I love Jewel.
It's too early. Hold on.
It's too early. Got me started, all wound up. I love you, Jewel. Jewel out there from New York. We love her.
I love you more. God bless you to you and your family. Thank you so much.
Impossible to love me more. I love Jewel. That's my girl. Hey, attorney. Attorney Mark Fancher joining attorney Anastasia Sanat and attorney Daryl Jones. What do you make of this recusal? Do you think that that this is something that Ketanji Brown Jackson, the justice, should she have recused herself from the Harvard affirmative action case? Now, she hasn't recused herself from the UNC Chapel Hill affirmative action case because she was, of course, not on the board at UNC. She's not an alum of UNC Chapel Hill. But what do you think about that? I mean, because there is no rule, and thank you, attorney Daryl Jones, that says that she had to do that. What do you think?
Well, I think this question, as is the case with many of the questions that we grapple with, has a pretty obvious and easy answer. When someone ascends to a position like that, who comes from our community, our hope and our expectation is that they will seize that opportunity, that they will do as much as they can possibly do, that they will throw their bodies into the machine if necessary in order to make the necessary sacrifices and contributions for our community. And so certainly I would hope that, absent some clear limitations on her ability to participate in a case like that she would. And that if there is pushback, that she, with her brilliance, would be able to respond with an analysis which would explain and justify her continued participation in the case. That's what I would hope. I would hope that Clarence Thomas would, exercise some degree of integrity and recuse himself from those cases where he clearly should. But the fact is, and people get mad at me, the fact is there's not a thing we can do about either of them. Not one thing. They're there for life, and they will do what they will do. And I really honestly think that our time and our energy is better spent trying to figure out what we're going to do. And, I believe that the first thing that we have to do is to come to terms with the fact that while there are certainly things that we can do to improve our condition through use of the courts, there are things that we can do to increase our likelihood of surviving America through use of the courts, that it is not, and it does not offer a pathway to liberation. Nor does any institution that is part of the United States of America offer us a pathway to liberation, because the United States as an empire has been designed specifically for the purpose of preventing us from ever becoming free. And that's a simple fact. And I think that we see that most clearly in those cases where the court has done the right thing. Take, for example, Brown versus Board of Education. In 1954, the court did the right thing. They ruled that segregation was unconstitutional, and they struck it down. But you will also see that not one thing happened in response. Nobody desegregated. The schools were still just as segregated as they ever were. Jim Crow was still the rule in the South. The only thing that caused Jim Crow and segregation to begin to fall was when Rosa Parks refused to surrender her seat in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955 and triggered a movement that Dr. King became the iconic leader of. And lots of people began to struggle and fight outside of the bounds of the institutions that America has created. America's institutions failed Black people. It took a movement from outside of its institutions to finally force some type of a concession from the system that would allow for Jim Crow to become part of history. And so we have to understand that nothing has changed. In the same way that the system and the institutions were not prepared to grant us what we need and what we want and what we've been demanding forever in terms of first-class citizenship and participation into the system, it is not going to do it. It never will. It requires us to act outside of these institutions and in order to do it. And it's not an unprecedented idea. Certainly, we just talked about the movement, the civil rights movement, the Black Panther Party, which set up an entire network of social service agencies and things to serve our community. It is something that we should do. The first century Christians did it. After Jesus Christ was killed on the cross and his followers were in disarray and trying to figure out what to do, they did not wring their hands and wonder how they could somehow persuade Pontius Pilate to become better, or to try and figure out how to make the Roman Empire respect them, or to try and figure out how the Roman Empire was going to respect their human rights. They said later for that. They separated themselves. They created a community of people of goodwill, people of faith, who shared all things in common, who lived amongst each other, aspiring to justice and equality and peaceful interactions, and guided by Jesus' teachings and doctrines. And they were able to function effectively that way as a separate community. People of goodwill who understand the nature of the U.S. empire will not spend that much time and energy worrying about the Supreme Court and what it does. Certainly we'll do our obligatory duty to try and remain vigilant and do what we can, but we also have to recognize the limits of what we can do and not waste energy trying to do things that we cannot do because the system won't permit it.
So let me just get clear. Do you think that, as you respond, Attorney Sanat, do you think that she has an obligation? She has an obligation on that court. Because it's clear that everybody there has some kind of principled obligation to some kind of doctrine or institution. Do you think that she made an error? An historical error by not participating in this decision, Attorney Fancher?
Honestly, I think that.
Hold on, Attorney Sanat, and then I want you to respond. And let's get engaged about this.
Yeah, I have my opinions, and I think that every legal professional, whether it's a practitioner or whether it's a judge, has to make an assessment of what their professional code of ethics, whichever one guides them, what it allows them to do and what it does not allow them to do, and they do that in good faith. And so I have no reason to question her good faith analysis. I can only say that if I were in her position, I would certainly seize the opportunity to become part of a case that has such profound implications for the community, which has nurtured me, which has allowed me to rise to the position that I'm in. And it's the least that I could do for that community, even if it means that I place my own professional status at risk by doing it.
Well, because is that not the kind of justice that Thurgood Marshall was?
He absolutely was. He is the model of someone who was prepared to go to the mat, even when he was the lone dissenter. And there's so many cases where he was the only one who was speaking loudly and clearly in favor of justice and civil rights in his dissents, his lonely dissents. But he set the tone. He was the model. He was what we would hope that he would be. Now, I have some other problems with him in other areas of his life, but in terms of his performance on the Supreme Court, it was exemplary.
Attorney Sanat.
I have 2 points that I want to make, and they were both brought up by both of the attorneys. First, it is important that we recognize that the community has to support the decision of this justice. Because, for example, when Attorney Darrell Jones brought up Rosa Parks and her refusal to give up her seat for a white person, she wasn't the first to do it. Claudette Colvin was the first to do it. But she didn't receive the same attention as Rosa Parks because the community, the Black community, did not want to support her. Some of the reasons were because of her hair. Some of it was because she was not fair-skinned. She was dark. She was a teenager. She was pregnant. So even though she, at 15 years of age in 1955, on March 2nd, refused and was arrested for the same action that Rosa Parks was arrested, the community was unwilling to give her, so to speak, the opportunity to fight that. What they did is they gave it to Rosa Parks. Stay in this situation when we're talking about
and if I can insert here, but as you go on, Rosa Parks also said her inspiration for not moving was Emmett Till, because that was March of 55, but in August of 55, you had the lynching of Emmett Till, which changed everything, right? Please continue, Attorney Sanat.
Yeah. And when I mentioned earlier about the internal compass and how most lawyers are governed by some kind of ethics code where the appearance of impropriety is something that is governed, it doesn't apply to the justices. In a I don't want to put Justice Jackson out there, but the truth is there was a case, Lloyd's Banking Group PLC et al. Versus the Berkshire Bank et al., in which there was a petition concerning bank collusion and interest rates during the Great Recession. Now, in that particular case, Justice Jackson did not recuse herself, even though she herself had disclosed in her financial disclosures that she holds 4 Charles Schwab's funds. And ownership in the Schwab fund that appears to be the reason why, for example, Chief Justice Roberts recused himself, and Justices Kagan and Gorsuch also recused themselves from that petition determination. So it's not as if she hasn't recused herself, but this particular case, I agree with Attorney Sancher that, it might be a good opportunity for her to do it, but she already said she wasn't going to do it. And because she already said she wasn't going to do it, she wants to make sure that the record is clear that if she's not going to do it, she's not going to do it. And this is the reasons why.
But, so I think that he was speaking to what it is that we need, because there's a reason that she's there. It's just, I think that, everything has context, right?
Everything has context, but if the Harvard case comes up first and it's decided, then she has an opportunity to redeem herself with the UNC case. So it's an excellent opportunity for us as a community just to support her. Like I said, she hasn't recused herself in a case that people thought the appearance of impropriety would have been a reason why she should recuse herself, which is the case that I just mentioned. But there are other opportunities, and there will be other opportunities for her to stand up for the community. She won't have to be a Claudette Colvin all the time.
But
in
what?
This particular situation, I think it's a good way.
But this is where I have to say, because you brought up the Schwab case. The fact is, whenever Black people go anywhere, whenever women go anywhere, whenever oppressed people go somewhere, you're representing your people. That's just the reality. And we sent you there. You are there on the backs and the shoulders of a whole lot of people. And I need you to go there and take your hits like Thurgood Marshall did. Thurgood Marshall walked onto the court as a civil rights lawyer who had argued the Brown v. Board of Decision case, and Brown versus Board case, and he never let you forget it. He never let you forget it. And at some point, and when I look at different groups, they stand on the oppression of their people, and they stay right there. They don't move. They don't move. And I think that, we're going to have to get to a place where we've got to do it and we cannot move. It doesn't mean that you don't support her. Of course I support her, but not uncritically. But we just have to learn how to critique with love, Attorney Jones, and not try to tear people apart. But I think there's certain obligations that we have, and that we need to hold people to, Attorney Jones. It's just my thought. It doesn't mean that I don't support you. It just means that, no, I have a certain expectation that when something like this comes down the pike, I need you to weigh in. Because as these Trump cases are coming down the pike, Trump's lawyers are saying, oh no, the person upon whom we can depend is this guy, and there's nothing you could do. You can't, he's unimpeachable on this point, and he ought to be.
Right. And you're exactly on it, Santita, because it becomes a question of can you impugn the person's integrity at any point in time? And I think that what Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is laying the groundwork for is to say that you're not going to question my integrity. You're not going to question my character. When I see something that comes close to the line, I'm going to say this is close to the line, and I'm going to step to the side. I understand, what Attorney Fancher, what Mark was saying with regards to, you're really needed on this. You can really have a significant impact on this. But I can also have a significant impact negatively, because on other cases that I take up, if I'm questioned, if my integrity is questioned, the question will be, are you speaking with a forked tongue? Are you talking because you have an interest that somehow is relatable, quantifiable, beyond that which is purely law?
Well, stay right there. Hold on. Stay right there. I know Attorney Anastasia Sinat is going to have to leave. We've got Dr. Max Wolf coming just in a couple of minutes. But I want you to be able to finish your point on the other side. I don't want to truncate what you're saying, because I think what you're saying is very, very important. Anastasia Sinat, Attorney Anastasia Sinat, I love you, and I'm going to try and make it on the 8th of December. I promise you. Haitian style. But you need to do something else, Haitian style. Something involving food.
Okay, I will. And thank you all. And thank you so much, Santita Jackson, for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Oops, Aurora. Love you much. I'll stay right there. So I'm going to get some closing thoughts from these brilliant lawyers before we bring on Dr. Max Wolf. Back in a minute. You won't keep talking on Facebook. I'm sorry, Daryl. I mean, because, I understand the ethical bar, but, when it came to the money, she said, no. She stayed. I mean, I'm just saying she stayed in on one, right? Or one case where she could have recused herself. And on these cases, this is why you're there. I mean, because they already called her an affirmative action hire, Daryl, and Attorney Fancher, Attorney Jones, and Attorney Fancher. That's what her whole hearing was about.
As far as I'm concerned, she should embrace this. I mean, if it were me, I'd say, yeah, I'm partial. I'm black, and I'm from the black community, and I'm here to protect them. What of it? I mean, I'm here because I have a special perspective on these kinds of issues that the court otherwise lacks. And so I have a duty and an obligation, not just to my community, but to the court, to make sure that it has access to my perspective in order to make a fully informed decision on this case. So yes, you say that I'm being partial, or that I'm biased because I'm from the black community. Well, of course, all of us are, and I'm proud of who I am and where I come from, and I'm here to tell you what my community thinks about these issues. They're non-justices. My voice is one of them. If it's a collective decision. But I'm going to make my contribution because that's why my community wants me here.
Well, I mean, what say you, Attorney Jones?
I would be right there with Mark on 99% of those cases. I think that when you find yourself in that position, you own it. You own it. You own the position that you're in. I am that black person. I am the person that's been discriminated against. My family were the people that were discriminated against. You own that position, and then you have the opportunity to go and have the argument as to why it has historically been wrong, or why it has been historically necessary to have the admissions include the factor of a person's race that has been excluded for generations on end. So, I certainly believe in what he's saying, that you own the position that you're in. You've got to own it. But I think at the same time, if owning a position compromises your integrity, that's where I draw the line. And if it compromises your integrity with regards to future issues, and I'm not certain I'm not certain that her integrity would have been compromised in the Harvard case. I'm not certain that would have been that factor. It seems a little extraneous to me, a little remote to me, the connection from her position on Harvard with regards to the admissions decisions and the factoring that made up this case. But she saw it as close enough to be connected that she did not want to be hampered or rolled in on an analysis of saying that you're not being impartial because of the board that you sat on at Harvard, and now you're hearing cases with regards to the admission policies. So I respect the decision that she's made, but as Mark said, and as Anastasia was saying, I think you got to own who you are and own the situation that you're in. So, that's sort of where I come from with her. I respect her decision. Would I have done the same? Probably not. But, again, I don't know all the factors that she was weighing into in making that decision. And between her and Justice Thomas, it speaks clearly to the reason why Justice Roberts or other members of this court need to put in place an ethics commission for members of the Supreme Court to make determinations as to whether or not there are conflicts that should recuse them from hearing particular cases.
Yeah, I think that she did something that was very logical and on its face reasonable and fair. But America is an illogical, irrational, unfair place. And no matter what she does, people are always going to question her integrity. I don't care how much integrity she actually has. They're still going to call her the N-word at every opportunity. They're still going to question her decisions. And so you might as well just accept it and do what you got to do. I mean, that's what I would tell her if I had a chance to speak with her.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I feel about it. Dr. Wolf, are you there? Okay. Well, look, because the thing is, of course, we don't know all the pieces, but if you're going to be in the Thurgood Marshall tradition, this is it. And, people will call you biased, say, yeah, everybody's got a bias, but I am fair. And what is unfair is the exclusion of Black and brown people and women for 400 years. That's unfair. And we're seeking to remedy this. Period. Race was a factor in my admission to this court. Because you've never had me before. And I've been here all along. I just think that, there's some things that we have to be willing to take some hits for, right? Stand by. Do we have Dr. Wolf up? Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. No worries. Were we on the air the whole time? Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. I'm going to be talking with Dr. Max Wolf about the economy and inflation and the midterms. But, we're getting some closing thoughts from attorney Mark Fancher, brilliant civil libertarian and lawyer, and author of this book. I really want you all to get it. I'm going to have you come on and talk about it like that. Santita's Book Club. That's right. The Negroes of Friends Village. I've read it again, attorney Fancher, and it really is fascinating. It really, really, really is. I mean, you're a brilliant writer. I love it, reading everything that you do write. And as an equally brilliant attorney, Daryl Jones, we were talking through Ketanji Brown Jackson and her decision to recuse herself from this affirmative action case. Of course, the court decoupled of the affirmative action cases from the nation's oldest public and private universities. The oldest private university being Harvard, the oldest public being UNC Chapel Hill, so that she's going to vote on one, she's not going to vote on another. She's going to weigh in on one, vote on one, and she's not going to vote on the other. But the fact is, everybody has biases. The question is, what do you do with them? Are you going to be fair or unfair? The fact is, this is a very, 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 very important decision, Attorney Mark Fancher. And I tell you what, other people, Attorney Daryl Jones, go into these spaces knowing what their presence means. not just in these corporate spaces, in these judicial spaces, whatever, but they know what these. Am I on there or not, Jewel? Okay, Jewel, where are we?
Hi. So I just brought up Dr. Wolf, so he's on.
Okay, I need to know if I'm on the air or off.
You are off the air, girl. You are off the
No,
air.
because I came on like I was on the air.
Okay. You are off. And we're in commercial break.
Yeah, I hear that.
And we're
Okay.
doing our break as normal.
Was I talking?
Apologize.
No. You got to let me know because I was talking all the way through, and I just need to know.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
No, just let me know what when we're out, when we're in, what we're doing.
Yes. I was not in the studio. I was solving a critical issue.
No worries. But if I'm then let me know. I'm going to keep you on the air. You're going to keep on talking.
Yes, and I do apologize.
Okay,
That's
no
completely
worries.
on me. You were on until around 7:35. So if you talked,
yeah, we did,
and you thought you were on break, you were on the air. I will edit it out from the SoundCloud for that time if you would like me to.
Well, I mean, I didn't say anything that I won't live on, but it's uncomfortable for the audience.
Sure. Was there any personal information?
No.
Given?
I don't do that because I'm on Facebook. But it's awkward for the audience.
Yeah.
It's just awkward because I don't know where I am, right? So, but that's okay. We've got Dr. Wolf.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm getting closing thoughts from attorney Mark Fancher and attorney Daryl Jones, as we've been talking about Clarence Thomas and Ketanji Brown Jackson and their different approaches to recusals from cases on the Supreme Court, specifically affirmative action and Trump-related cases. So I'm going to give them, a minute or so just to close things out. And you know what, Attorney Fancher and Attorney Jones, we will come back and talk about this again. Okay?
We have about 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll be back.
Sure, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, take care.
Oh, no, stay right there. I want you to give your closing thought.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
Going live now.
The Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Keep Up Live with Refugees. Wow. See, this is what happens when you're on the air 6-7 days a week. This is the Santita Jackson Show. How about that? But I write and produce that one too, and some others. So there we go. But this is the Santita Jackson Show. Hope you go to vote.org, find out where you need to vote, find out what your registration status is. There's still time for you to work on that, everybody, and make sure that you carry ID and bills showing that you live where you live, because this is where you pay your bills. Take that to the polling place with you, because you just never know. And then 1-866-OUR-VOTE, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. If you have any trouble voting just outside the polling place, inside the polling place, at the ballot box, do all of that. And go to vigilantemovie.com. You can still see Greg Palast's fantastic movie. You can still see it for free today, thanks to Jamie Foxx. And of course, the executive producer, one of them, Martin Sheen. But as we bring on Dr. Max Wolf, we're talking about this affirmative action. I want to get some closing thoughts from you, Attorney Mark Fancher, and you, Attorney Daryl Jones. I'm going to start with you, Attorney Daryl Jones, about what our expectations should be. Because, certainly we support Ketanji Brown Jackson. I know I do. But there's certain things. I was talking to some of our elders, interestingly enough, Attorney Jones, and they were deeply disappointed that she recused herself. They were like, well, what is she there for? We need her there to make our case.
Yeah. And, absolutely, Santita, we would love to have 9 Ketanji Brown Jacksons on the Supreme Court, those that are just so committed to doing the right thing in the right way. And, one of the things that we know with Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is that, she's shown the grace under pressure. She's shown the integrity of a jurist, the intellect, analytical ability of a strong jurist, the moral compass of a strong jurist, as well as the commitment to the purity of the rule of law. All of that, I think, is distinguished and seeable and identifiable in the decision that she's made to recuse herself from the case in which she sat on the board of Harvard University to not hear their case regarding their admissions factoring and whether or not race should be considered. She's to be commended for it, really is, to be applauded for it. But at the same time, we also understand that on the other side of the aisle, we had a Clarence Thomas who did the exact opposite, whose wife was intimately involved in planning and encouraging a coup of our government, and refused to recuse himself from deliberations regarding the president at that time, President Trump's powers, and whether or not information should be sought from that. So, those are the two sides that we're looking at, and clearly the side that we would want any of our justices on is the one that says we're above all of this. I have some potential interest in this case through a spouse or anyone else. I don't want to in any way mess up this process. I want to be certain that the legal minds that the Supreme Court's value, that their integrity remains in place, and remove myself from that proceeding. And that's what Ketanji Brown Jackson did, and I commend her for it. She could have stayed in that case if she wanted to, but she did what she thought was the moral high ground to do, and I applaud her for that, and I will never knock anyone down for doing what they believe is the moral right to that situation, Santita.
No, I mean, I hear you, but was it the morally right thing to do? What do you think, Attorney Fancher, before we go?
Well, I'll accept her good faith, as I've said before, but I think it was the wrong thing to do in this sense. And I would hope that we're talking not just to her, but to all of us. And we need to be honest with ourselves about who we are as African people. And that is that no matter what we do, no matter how perfect we are, no matter how much integrity we show, no matter how competent we are, no matter what we do, they're looking at us as enemies. They're still calling us the N-words. They're still doing everything that they can to undermine our credibility and everything that we stand for. And we have to understand we're in a state of war. And it's not just her. She has to understand that when she's on the Supreme Court, that when a case like this comes along, she's there as a warrior for her community. Her community put her there, and so that it's her responsibility to fight as hard as she can. And like any warrior, there's the chance that she may go down. But we've had our ancestors to go down, and we've benefited from it. Those who have, their descendants have benefited from their sacrifice. And we can expect that from people that we put in those positions because we put her there. And I think it's true for all of us, no matter what we do, whether we're accountants, whether we're doctors, whether we're sanitation workers, whatever it is, we're representatives of our communities. And when we're in positions in our workplaces or wherever we may be, to stand up and to take a stand for our community and for our people, we better do it. There are too many people who have bled and died for us, who fought and sacrificed for us to say, no, I'm just going to protect myself. I'm going to make sure that people think that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm good, that no matter what you do, they will not think well of you. And even if they did, it's not about you. It's not about us as individuals. It's about us as a community. And we have to stand with each other, for each other, and fight for our people, no matter what the cost.
There you have it. Different viewpoints, and I tell you, we need to continue this discussion. I have a feeling that this needs to go forward. Sending you, Attorney Mark Fancher, and you, Attorney Darrell Jones, so much love. Thank you for giving us a lot to think about this morning. We're going to revisit this. We've got Dr. Max Wolf, everybody. Let me pivot here. 1 in 3 voters say that fixing the U.S. economy should be the top priority. Indeed, overwhelmingly, people say that the economy, inflation, not being able to afford the basics in America today, that's what's making them vote. After the Kansas decision and all that, yep. Now it's coming down to the money. It's coming down to the money that people don't have. Dr. Max Wolf, boy, you are busy nowadays. Not that you're not always. Welcome back to the show. It's wonderful hearing your voice.
Thank you. So it's hard to manually drive up all of America's prices, but I work hard.
Talk to me. I mean, it's like it's almost as if this issue has not come out of nowhere. Let me not say that, because that's not true. But now it seems that the economy is at the center of everything. Inflation, what people can and cannot afford. Now you got the Fed hiking up their rates. They're guaranteeing that we're going to lose jobs. And people are like, are you serious right now? And then the president gives a speech on the democracy. Of course it's under threat. It's always under threat. It has been under threat. What do you see?
Yeah, so I would say that the economic discussions we have tend to be intense, but they're also intensely ignorant. And people are able to weaponize that ignorance, and we're about to see that in action. It would have been a uniquely difficult moment for our democracy at perhaps the end. And so, difficulties exist on a continuum. Things have been difficult a long time. They have been difficult before. But I think it's a significant probability that in the next 2 years, what imperfect democratic features we have will be under strain and threat in a way that has not been the case for at least many decades. I think it's an unusual moment. And in that moment, one of the two parties has been able to define the economic discussion. So one of the oddities of American political life is that Americans associate parties with areas of life, right? So the Republican Party, for some reason, which is not exactly clear and is not factually based, is seen as tough on crime and good on the economy. There's very little, to prove either of these things. On the economy, they have an unambiguous, less good economic record for the vast majority of people, but that doesn't seem to be relevant. And the Democratic Party is seen as the party to assure democracy right now and women's reproductive freedom. And I think that's probably open to some question, too. Might be more true on a relative basis than an absolute, but whatever. And so we tend to confuse these things. And so the Democratic Party is more interested in talking about the things that they score highly on. And the Republican Party tends to be more interested in talking about things that they score highly on. But the rule of our economic decision is to pretend that the economy is actually really simple and we all already know it. And I don't just say this because it's important for me for my career, although it probably is. That's just not true, right? So, we don't spend 6 years getting doctorates in economics because we're real slow and reading the same 6 articles you read on the toilet, just real slow, real careful. It's kind of a specialty. It has some technical features. Anyone can understand it. Anyone can participate in it. We all do. But it isn't simple. So if you need to be told how something major happens, like a general global increase in prices, it isn't going to be that Donald Trump did it or Joe Biden is doing it. They're not going to even be that important in that process. But we want everything to be reduced to a simple story of one individual, right? That we can love or hate, work for or work against. That's kind of nice, but then you turn 7, and your world is supposed to begin to become more complicated. And then 8, and then 9, and that has to happen a few times those birthdays, at least to best of my understanding, before you're even allowed to vote, let alone to run for some of these offices. So the truth is we have a general spike in inflation. That's true. But we also had almost no growth in prices for 15 or 20 years because we imported deflation by buying more and more of the things that we eat and more of the things that we use that were mechanized in their production, that were high-tech, and that were produced by very poorly compensated labor around the world. And so that kind of broke down when largely the same people screaming about inflation decided that globalization didn't work for them. They pushed politicians that tried to rapidly disassemble global supply chains without reducing the power of the transnational companies that ran those supply chains. And so you had a series of shocks. It took us 40 or 45 years to build that era of globalization, which did have many things wrong with it. Trying to tear it down quickly with no actual plan, largely the brainchild of Donald Trump and his folks, turned out to be a really bad idea, which is the sort of hallmark of the Trump years, a bad idea poorly executed. And when you have a series of really bad ideas and you execute them quite poorly, this is going to shock everyone, there is a piper to be paid. And so that created a situation where we were vulnerable to inflation, although it's not their fault. It really isn't. Not that simple. And then we had a series of events. I don't know if folks have heard about them, but it's this thing called COVID. I don't know if you're out there, maybe you didn't catch it, but it was majorly disruptive to the economy because it maimed and killed and terrified people into changing the way they work, the way they buy things, what they do for a job, where they do it, what they buy. And so it created, in this already vulnerable environment, a sudden shock and shift in how we work and how we consume, which further strained the production and distribution of goods and services. And one of the ways that strain shows up is inflation. And then last but not least, we had this really bad recession associated here with the downturn. It caused all kinds of global dislocation and suffering. And governments responded by giving people more money to keep their mouths above water. And if you give people more money, but the amount of things they can buy with that money reduces because production is stalled or stopped, often to save people's lives and often because of the pandemic, then you have more money chasing fewer things. That means prices go up. And then to that piece, again, it's not that hard. Everyone out there can understand it while driving and all the rest, but it's not one sentence. And then into all that, at the end of February of this year, we had one of the two remaining superpowers, if in name only perhaps, invade its neighbor. And the reason that matters to us on the food prices is one of those two neighbors is one of the world's largest producers of oil and gas, Russia. And both of those two neighbors now in a war, Russia and Ukraine, are together the world's largest producers of things like wheat, which turn out to be a pretty big part of what people eat in a large portion of the world. And so now we have calorie insecurity, which is our fancy economics term for starvation and hunger, and we have shocks to energy prices. All of this occurs in an environment where there's unregulated speculation. So large firms push their prices up because they can or because they need to or both. And various people attempt to make money by betting that prices will go up. And when people bet on prices to go up, they push them up. So the truth is we have inflation right now because we had a breakdown in globalization. We have supply chain shocks. We had a pandemic. We have a war with major producers, and we have more or less unrestrained global companies trying to turn everything, including this, into a profit opportunity. That's the result of 50 years of architecting the world economy. You can elect whoever you want or stay home and let someone else choose for you. Probably the worst idea, but unfortunately, a lot of people do it, and it's not going to make any difference to inflation. You might get a different story about inflation, but you're not going to get a different inflation rate. And because the public bought into the most simplistic and self-serving understanding of inflation months ago, it will help a bunch of people who are running on the basis of having committed an act of treason and a felony get elected. And you're going to be shocked to learn that just because you're able to have a riot because you don't like the outcome of an election does not automatically make you a great economics manager. I know it's shocking, but I think we're going to discover that when it's too late. And this is the same reason that if you're looking for a new economic or a financial advisor, I would suggest you do not look up local folks who've been arrested for rioting.
Where do you? But this is driving. But this is driving the vote. Now this is driving the vote.
Yeah.
I mean, the people who.
Sure, because crime and inflation are the framing of the election choice that gets the Republicans the House and Senate. I think it's a smart move for them. They kind of historically dominate those areas. I think the crime one is really often sort of thinly disguised hatred and suspicion for poor people and racialized in the U.S. The economics conversation is a bit different, but the idea there basically being that rich people are good at economics. The problem that makes it sort of shocking to me as an economist is rich people are good at doing something in the economy that leaves you poor if you're not rich. So betting on them to continue to do that and then you become rich, yes, this one I don't get. This is the, skinny wife with the fat husband who says he's a great cook. Well, it seems to like what he's cooking, but you don't.
Wait. I've got 1 minute left here. What economic argument do you think the Democrats should make? Go.
I mean, I think the argument should be that inflation is really a problem about how much you can afford as much as how expensive prices. And if we want to bring prices down for working people, we should probably do what every other industrialized country does, which is pick a bunch of staple goods and subsidize them so everybody has pretty good access to them, even when the prices shoot up, and try to tamper those subsidies in good times and increase them at bad times.
seems to have worked for most other advanced democracies for 100 years. So might be time we give it a try.
What does that mean in just tangibly? What does that mean for people?
I mean, I think you want to make public transit, education, basic food stuff inexpensive. And I also think that Democrats should try to seize back, or we should change the discussion about crime and tough on crime. I think tough on crime is about creating a society where people aren't driven to desperation and addiction as much as it is locking people, unfortunately, often of color, in prison for a long time, which, not that anyone seems to care, is also really expensive and rarely rehabilitative.
Dr. Max Wolf, everybody, helping us to understand what the real deal is when it comes to this, to the economy. I know you're very busy, but I want you to come back before Tuesday, because the economy, inflation, it's driving the vote. And I think you need to explain to people just what we're looking at. Let me know if you have any time, even tomorrow, just what we're looking at, because most of us don't understand what's going on here. We really don't. And and we're casting our vote along those lines. I'm sorry?
Last big piece of economic data before people vote probably comes tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. too, to get the jobs report. Looks at the sort of employment situation.
Well, come on and talk about it. Come on and talk about it.
Okay.
Love you, everybody. Stay right there, Dr. Wolf. Why don't you talk to Facebook Live? Thank you, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Dr. Wolf, what is the jobs report comes out tomorrow? What should we expect, and what will that mean?
So my guess is we're going to see still a pretty strong jobs report, but it'll be less strong than the previous one, because that's the initial indication from some of the other forecast services. I would look a lot. I'd try to see how the breakdown in jobs is beginning, because there is some mounting evidence that things are still growing economically here, but that growth rate's decelerating. And I know most people wouldn't catch it, but during the press conference that immediately followed the Federal Reserve announcement yesterday of the 75 basis points, 0.75% interest rate increase, he was asked, I think it was an NPR reporter, like, are you comfortable that you can do this, raise these rates without creating a recession? He basically said, no, we're probably going to create a recession. We have to get rates down as fast as people are demanding we do that. When they're this high, the inflation rates. And so, yeah, we're probably going to create a recession. And look, it was honest. It's the right answer to give. It's true. It's been pretty clear from the policy path if you understand how this stuff works. But that's the single most important, whatever people think, much more than the president, single most important individual economic decision maker in the country, Jerome Powell, saying, I am creating a recession. And to me, that always seems, I'm an economist, so we probably think economics factors are more important than other people do. I'll grant that. But no news agency, to my knowledge, picked it up.
They might have picked it up. They also ignore, Max, because they have a narrative that they're framing. Yeah. I mean, they just...
Could be, but that seems like a big one to ignore. This isn't like a marginal character at a conference. This is...
We ignore big stuff. We ignore big stuff all the time. Yeah. And we are ignoring big stuff because we're framing a particular narrative, and it's not working for people. And people are voting against their own interests because they're being given the wrong information.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of anger voting, too.
Because they're being given the... Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say... Well, some of that's wrong information, but people are hurting out here. Most Americans are not... My brother Jesse...
Really angry.
Well, I'm just saying, my brother Jesse put it this way when he was in Congress. He said, we are the best-dressed poor people in the world. Most Americans are not doing well. We're not. And we're afraid.
I'm not sure about the best dressed. I mean, I travel a lot, but whatever. I'll leave that alone.
we have clothes on our back. You know, that you are terrible.
And look, I'm not saying I'm fashionable, but I think if you travel, it's hard to sustain the belief that most Americans now wear, Crocs and plastic pants. So that's okay. I get it. It's a good price point. And I'm not too dapper myself, so I'm not throwing stones at others. But yeah, anyway, I'm sure that's not the point your brother's making.
Oh my gosh, no, he wasn't making that point. But I got you. I got your
point. For my money, by the way, if you want to see the best dressed poor people in the world, bar none, it's Ethiopia. I don't know why, but it's the only place you see lots of people who look very fancily dressed with pristine, like absolutely spotless white clothes with dust blowing everywhere, and on their jeans and a brown sweatshirt, filthy. And I'm like, how is this possible? Is the wind not getting to this guy?
Well, you know what? There's an expression all over the world with black people.
That's real poverty.
Well, no, but I'm just saying that there's an expression all over the world as it relates to black people everywhere, that cleanliness is next to godliness. And so there is a real thing in the black community, wherever we are in the diaspora, to be clean. To be clean. If you are not clean, people think that there's something wrong with you. I'm telling you. So that's a cultural thing. Just
Well,
wherever
a lot of
we
the
go.
world, I think, too, people, not just Africa either, but a lot of the world, people dress their class. So if you have some money, you present it in your jewelry, in your clothing, in your carriage.
Yeah, but I'm speaking of also, but there's basic standards that black people have everywhere about modesty, about how you're supposed to be dressed, about how you're supposed to comport yourself, all of that. That's just it's a real thing. There's a real prohibition throughout. I would say, people of color, you're not, as a woman, you're not supposed to have bare arms. Because that's you're being too immodest. That's you're naked. You wear stockings at particular events because otherwise you're being immodest. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. It's a real thing, and that's why people object to.
Stockings are rough business if it's hot, though.
Well, it's just you're talking about people who are basically very conservative, So I'm just sharing. Yeah. Just sharing. But, can you let me know if you have any time to come back on tomorrow, because people are voting on this, Max. They're voting on the economy.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty clear. It looks terrible. If you look at the advanced polling, one other thing I think might be interesting, just to keep in the back of our heads, and I don't know how this shakes out, is a lot of traditional modeling that forecasts decision-making or behavior pre-pandemic has been pretty poor. Post-pandemic. In other words, the models that are pretty good, that have a good track record even for quite some time of accurately forecasting, a fair number of them have fared kind of poorly. And there's some probably good reasons, just that, life has changed, decisions have changed, tastes have changed a bit from the various traumas and changes with the pandemic. So I kind of wonder, and so it'll be a little bit interesting to see how accurate some of these polls are. But all midterm elections come down to turnout, right? So,
well, people are turning out.
To watch.
More Democrats are voting than Republicans.
Early voting.
Yeah, early voting. But 53 million. In addition to the early voting, 53 million people have applied for absentee ballots. So there is a lot going on out there. The political body is electric.
Things hard to predict.
Yeah, well.
I think it makes these things a little trickier to predict than maybe everyone appreciates who's going by the polls.
Oh, look, I'm not trying to predict. I'm just trying to find out, where are people? That's what I want to know. Just where are
I think the old joke I'd repeat, even though it's not eloquent, which is there's a lot of really angry Americans watching a movie they don't like at this drive-through theater, and they're pissed, and they're going to splash the seat. And the problem is, not always a great idea.
No, it's not. Max, I love my Max. I love you.
I did not make that one up. I can't take credit for it.
No. Oh, so you're not going to be James Corden and take all the credit? Oh, Corden is it?
Really?
He is a comedian. He's on television. Yeah, he took the credit for something.
Oh, no, I know who this is. This is the guy who gets thrown out of the restaurant.
Yes. Right? He's having a tough time. He's having a moment. Really tough
I don't know.
moment.
I think I might have missed his show, but yeah.
Yeah, he's having a tough moment. It happens to the best of us, everybody. Leave space for some redemption.
Okay, I'll give you a blanket statement. If I've said anything that seems interesting or eloquent, it's probably someone else's.
I love that. Being honest.
Blanket statement.
Oh,
especially
boy.
if it sounded good. Look, even when you think you made stuff up, the truth is, it's hard to always remember. Innocently, I mean, without doing anything nasty. Sometimes you think you had a great idea, and you bump into someone, and they say, yeah, that's a great idea. I liked it when these 12 other people told me before you did, too.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. You go back and look, you'll realize, hey, you spend a lot of time listening to other people and reading. It's hard to know which thoughts were yours. Like, honestly, it is hard to know.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're right.
Which isn't to say some people don't intentionally claim ownership of other people's work, which is obviously not the high road. Let me look at the schedule, and I'll find the time to come back.
Okay.
How long of a segment are we thinking?
Oh.
Like 10, 15, something like that?
You know what? I'm sorry. Let me run. I'm late for a phone call. Okay.
Do your thing.
Okay, sweetie. I'll call you back. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.